There's been some confusion on this, Senator. Can I ask you, um, as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, what was communicated to you? What has been communicated to you about U.S. involvement in Iran? I guess going back to when we bombed their nuclear sites.
So there's been no communication. There was a briefing scheduled that would have happened last week that was canceled. There was a follow-on briefing that was supposed to occur today that has been canceled. So there really has been no briefing by the administration.
And there's also further confusion and maybe some misinformation about the success of the mission. Obviously, President Trump claimed total success. I think he said obliterated the nuclear sites, but then there's been reports that maybe not a lot of damage was done. Do you have any information about that, or would that have been essentially part of the briefing?
Well, the most dangerous article in Iran wasn't a missile or a centrifuge. It was 880 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, and there's no sense of where that is. And therefore that's a big challenge for the future because that's the highly enriched uranium that, if further enriched, could become the basis for a nuclear weapon should Iran choose to make a weapon. And all of our intelligence says they've never chosen to go down that path.
Do you believe America is safer or less safe than before the U.S. bombed Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, let me put it this way. There was no urgent threat. Not only had Iran not made the decision to make a nuclear weapon, but all of our intelligence estimates said that if they did make that decision, it would take a significant amount of time because you have to further enrich to 90%, you have to turn it into a metal, you have to be able to take this mass of uranium that's highly radioactive and surround it with highly explosive components that will all detonate at once and compress that ball sufficient to start a nuclear fission reaction. That is a highly technical undertaking, very, very difficult. It's only with great optimism could folks say that can be done under a year. So that is the reason that the president should have followed the Constitution and consulted Congress because there was no urgent threat to the United States. And let me just say, it is extremely easy to start a war and often very difficult to get out of it. And that's why the founders of our nation said a decision about going into war needs to be made by Congress, not by a president.
Benjamin Netanyahu said President Trump said that the U.S. would not be any more involved. That essentially it ended with those strikes over the weekend. Is that your understanding? Is that what you believe? You know, when you say mention starting a war, are we in a war? I mean, is that how you see it right now?
I think whenever you go to another country and drop such massive tonnage, you are in a war, and it taken a fast end? We don't know yet. I mean, what happens in the weeks to come? We don't know. Here's the thing: there is no end to the challenge regarding a nuclear weapons program until there's a diplomatic agreement that stops all paths to a nuclear weapon. We had such an agreement under Obama. It stopped the uranium path. It stopped the plutonium path. It stopped the surreptitious path. And that agreement was torn apart, shredded by President Trump, leading to Iran enriching beyond the level needed for a civilian nuclear reactor. So we know diplomatic strategy can be very, very effective in ending any possibility of a nuclear weapon program. That has to be recreated. So there's going to have some kind of diplomatic follow-on that addresses those issues, that addresses verification, that addresses Iranian funding of militias throughout the Middle East. And if that can be accomplished, then also the agreement needs to enable Iran to thrive, to be able to sell their oil, to drop the sanctions, to return the funds that are frozen, and enable Iran to become a successful country that would operate in peace with the rest of the world.
President Trump's meeting
Brendan's
with
got time
NATO.
for about one more question.
Sure. President Trump's meeting with NATO members and allies this week. What do you hope his message is to them? What would you like to see accomplished?
Well, I think he'll reiterate, I hope he'll reiterate his commitment to the U.S. not being further engaged and to the ceasefire. I spent the weekend saying the urgent task before us is for there to be a ceasefire to prevent an escalation to a very broad war. President Trump, in fact, did work to create such a ceasefire. And so I approve of that. I think that was the right thing to do. That was a very important thing to do. But it needs to be backed up now with a diplomatic framework that ends the hostile relationship that has caused so much grief for the world over these last few decades.